Hello? Hi. This is exciting and intimidating at the same time, especially since I have the dance floor all to myself. So a lot of people have been commenting on my attire this go around. I typically wear my clown clothes when I come to these type of events, but I decided to change it up. Just a funny joke about this suit was a few weeks ago when I found it, I thought, I'm going to Chicago. I want to get a cool blue suit, maybe look like a sexy, rugged, like jazz pianist or something, fit right in. I bought the suit, I took a picture, I sent it to my mom, who has no measurable sense of humor, and her response to the picture of me in the suit was, LOL, that will fit in perfectly at your little humor conference. So I'm already starting with a lot of self-esteem with this suit, So I wanted to talk about an incident that I had with trauma and how humor was instrumental in kind of pulling me out. For those that follow me on Facebook, all of my Facebook friends out there have kind of kept up with this incident that happened around 4 years ago. So I'm a member of a motorcycle club, which is ironic because for those of you that have met me more than 5 minutes think that's probably hilarious that I have this one hypermasculine quality to go with my socks. So 4 years ago, I was on my way to a meeting in Waco, Texas. Anybody familiar with Waco? No? If you're a Baylor fan, that's where Baylor is. If you're from the South, you may know it as the birthplace of Dr. Pepper, so thank God for Waco. If you like HGTV, there's Chip and Joanna Gaines, yeah. I thought that's what would get the crowd, so. So I was on my way to this meeting, and it was a coalition of clubs and independents. So when you're in a motorcycle club, you can have professional organizations such as AATH. It's all the motorcycle clubs that exist in a particular region in Texas. So from Dallas all the way down to San Antonio, we get together once a quarter to talk about biker legislation, helmet laws, that kind of stuff. So it's weird, right? Bikers getting together, talking. So at the meeting, there was two clubs that notoriously didn't get along. There had been some fights, there had been some issues. Well, both of them showed up that day, and a fist fight broke out. And I had just shown up, I was on my bike, I was trying to park. Probably from here to the back door was where I was when the fight broke out. I turned around to start backing up my bike, and all of a sudden I heard a gunshot. And then two more popped off. And then all hell broke loose. And it was like a war zone because there was no time to think. I had to kick my kickstand down, and I had to get behind my bike, and then from there, crawled to the nearest car. And as soon as I put my back against the car, because all of the chaos is happening over here, all I feel is the vibrations of like bullets hitting the car that my back is to. And then you see glass shatter. And the trouble in my voice isn't necessarily because I'm nervous. This is one of the first times that I've talked about it in this large of a scale, because this is still part of the healing process for me. So amidst the chaos, which I later found out was only 2.5 minutes, but felt like an hour, watched people die. This is a perfect topic for post-lunch. 9 people died, 18 got injured. Like I said, I was about 20 feet from the chaos, watched a man bleed out, watched ambulance refuse treatment because the police wouldn't clear the crime scene as safe yet. So there was a gentleman they put in the bed of a truck and was driving back and forth from the ambulance that was staged at the this was in a strip center, so at the very end. Ambulance wouldn't accept until the police gave the all clear. He eventually passed away, all before our eyes. So before the bullets stopped, there was just, no one knew, everybody was frozen. You have the fight, you have the flight, or you have the freeze. So we're just glued to the back of this car because this is the only cover that we have. And then this gentleman just comes diving in, so it's me and 3 others, and he's just grabbing his shoulder, and he's like, oh shit, oh shit. And we're like, oh my gosh, did you get shot? And he's like, no, I just twisted my arm running. And so, in the middle of the chaos, there was just this breath of levity. And then weirdly, we all started laughing. Bullets are still flying, right? And Viktor Frankl tells us that an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is a normal reaction, right? Any Viktor Frankl fans? Man's Search for Meaning. Spells his name with a K because he's cool, or German. And so when that happened, there was this moment of pause. And like Viktor Frankl says, there's a stimulus, and then there's this moment of choice. And you can take this and you can see the absurdity of the situation and you can laugh at it and you can apply the humor, or you can let it consume you. We chose to laugh because what else were we going to do? So the bullets calm down, the police come in, they take control of the crime scene. If you're inside the perimeter, you get arrested right away. Those of us on the outside had to find rides. Everybody told us to go home. So I live in Austin, which is about 2 hours or so from Waco. I had a buddy coming to pick me up. 2 hours later, he's about 20 minutes outside of town, and then all of a sudden, police walk up, draw their weapons, point them at our faces, and say, you're under arrest. So at the end of the day, they arrested all 177 people that were there, all because we had stylish matching jackets, and they decided to pick up every biker that was present. We were also all charged with the same crime, which is engaging in organized criminal activity. So regardless if they picked adorable me, who was waiting for a ride, or picked up Mr. Angry Biker with a bloody knife in his hand, we all got charged the same way. So that night, went to jail. I don't know if you've ever been in jail. It is not the best experience. Gave them a negative Yelp review because it was probably the worst day of my life. And I've never been in a situation that was just so bizarre and this moment of just complete detachment that I just felt like, this isn't real. This isn't happening. And all I could think about was that guy that didn't get shot, that just pulled his arm because he was super old. And I couldn't sleep. Fun fact about jail, they don't turn off the lights. You're just kind of chilling there, and you don't know, there's no clocks, there's no windows. You lose your sense of time. You don't know if it's been 5 minutes or 5 hours. And I'm racking my brain to try to sleep, and I can't sleep, and I can't sleep. And all of a sudden, this guy pops into my head, and I just start laughing. And the more I laugh, the more I realize how inappropriate it is that I'm laughing. And then that just makes me laugh even more. After about 5 minutes of that, I just passed out. My body was finally able to decompress. I was finally able to get the dopamine, flush out some of that cortisol, fall right to sleep. I was able to bond out the next day. And then the day after that, so it took place on a Sunday, bonded out Monday night. Tuesday morning, woke up in Austin, met with a lawyer. They said, this is weird. You're fine. Don't worry about it. By noon, I got a call from the bondsman saying that your bond was revoked and there's marshals going to find you. So, fun fact, I was working for the local mental health authority at the time. They sent marshals to our admin building where a CEO works and wanted to find Patrick Harris. Well, joke's on them, my real name is Jim, so they didn't find me. So we go back to the lawyer's office. The lawyer said there's no way around it. This is not legal, but if you don't turn yourself in, you look guilty. So turned ourselves into the marshal's office. Fun fact, there was a 12-hour window when I was one of 3 most wanted men in Texas, right up there with Pancho Villa, so not bragging. And so the irony of going to Waco right before the bullets went off, hairspray was on my Pandora randomly because it was just on like shuffle. That was another thing that I was thinking of when I was talking to the marshals about surrendering myself. So go to jail, this time in Travis County, spend one night in Gen Pop, and at this time the news caught wind that there were 3 bikers accidentally released. So they made it look like we escaped. They had my name, my address, my picture, my date of birth. They even had a map of Austin with little dots where we all lived, all over the news. So we had to be put in protective custody, and which I was fine with. I didn't want to make friends while I was there, so I got put in protective custody. There's this big tank, and it's this big room, and there's 3 cells on the bottom and 3 cells on the top, and for an hour in the morning and the hour in the afternoon, you get the tank to yourself. Otherwise, you're inside your cell. And the whole time, I'm like, well, I've seen some jail movies. Let me just act tough and do push-ups. And so after about 5 of those, we're just sitting there. And I'm just mean-mugging everybody I can because I have tattoos. I can look intimidating if I pretend. So I tell myself. I don't know if it's true. But so all of a sudden, the news, there's a TV inside the tank. And there was this kid who couldn't have been more than 17, 18 that was also there. Come to find out later, the reason everybody else in there was under protective custody was because they were too nice to be in Gen Pop. So this whole time, I'm kind of being a dick to them. And they were super nice people that just like had too many parking tickets or something. So there's this kid, and all of a sudden I hear my name being said on the news, shows a picture, and he just goes. At this time, they raised my bond to $2 million. Yeah. I don't have $2 million, so I was stuck there for a while. Just for a frame of reference, there was that kid that shot up I think it was a Baptist church a few years ago. I'm not going to name him because he doesn't deserve to be named. His bond was $1 million. $2 million. Not bragging. But, so this is day 3, and I finally have the tank to myself, call friends and family, and then I decide I'm going to get a shower in because I haven't showered in 3 days. And it was at this point where I was racking my brain, and fortunately I was still in grad school. I had just finished reading Man's Search for Meaning, And it was stuck in my head that I need to laugh. Like, I need to bring humor into this or I will crumble. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. So I go into the shower. And what's the one thing you know not to do in jail? Yeah. So luckily I was by myself, had the shower to myself. I still go in there with my little bedding, my tiny little hotel bar of soap, and I put it there. I'm just standing there feeling the warmth of the water on me, and I reach for the towel, and slow motion, soap drops to the floor. And again, I had a choice. There was the moment of, well, shit. Or acknowledge that this is a very absurd, horrible situation and think, this is the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. And I just die laughing. So to recap, the people in the tank watched me make a phone call, had my name on the news, walk to the shower, and just start laughing maniacally. And I start laughing for 10 minutes straight. And then, weirdly, no one talked to me for the rest of that time. So then SWAT then took me and the two others from my club, took us back to Waco, where we spent the remainder of our 8 days. So 11 days total, 8 days in McLennan County Jail. So at least I was with familiar faces. It was the three of us in an 8-person cell. You get a phone, you get a shower, you get a TV. Still, they don't turn the lights off. And it just, when I first got there, I looked in the little like mirror, like you've seen in the movies. It's just like the steel plate. And it was just kind of funny the first day. It's just, well, first of all, orange is not my color. Second of all, this is just absurd to see myself like in this like jail suit jumper. I come from 4 generations of police officers. My uncle Roy Martinez was the first Hispanic police officer in the city of Houston. And so just the fact that I was on this side of the law was hilarious. But the weird thing about trauma is that you have a lot of guilt and you have a lot of shame that's associated, regardless of if you did anything wrong or not. So every day got a little bit more difficult to find the funny. Every day it was, my facial hair was growing out a little bit more. Fun fact, they don't give you hair product in jail, so this was all in disarray. And I started developing the sense of like learned helplessness. So even though I know I'm not a criminal, I know I'm not a bad guy, seeing yourself in this little prison orange every single day behind this clouded mirror, it just really weighs on your soul, right? Anybody hear of Martin Seligman? I think he was the sadist that like shocked a bunch of dogs, and that's where we learn about learned helplessness, where dogs were put in a cage and they were administered a shock. And then so understandably the dog would freak out, try to find a way out. And then there was no way out. So the dog would get shocked again. Understandably, the dog would freak out. After a while, the dog would just lay down and take it. And that's where we get learned helplessness from, was when there's not an escape to the situation, you just kind of accept it. And this was another turning point where I considered Mr. Frankel, and I thought, I can just kind of dive in, take it, or find the funny. And up until then, there was this guard who we later would call Big Mama, her name. I am a skeptic. I don't know that that is her given Christian name, but that's what she told us to call her. Before that, it was ma'am. There was no familiarity. There was no conversation. It was yelling orders here and there. And then all we wanted was a microwave so we could have hot coffee. And every time we'd ask her, she would just ignore and walk past. And then one day I was just frustrated, and I said, look, I called ahead weeks ago. I wanted the room with a view. Did not happen. Can we at least get a microwave? And that was the first smile I ever saw break on her face. After that, best friends. She would come in and be like, oh, what's up, boys? How's it going? I've had a bad day. Can you make me laugh? And just that laughter is the shortest distance between two people, really cut through. And she doesn't know who we are. $2 million bonds, like, we could be scary bikers. We're not, but she didn't know that. But it creates that relationship. So, flash forward. It's still not behind me. They just recently dropped all the criminal charges, and that was over 4 years ago. 2 years ago, the state of Texas refused to give me my therapist license because when you have engaging in organized criminal activity on your record, it kind of comes off as a little intimidating. But again, trying to find the funny in the situation and trying to really appreciate the situation for what it is. And the further along I get in my education, the more I can appreciate this quote by T.S. Eliot, which is, what happened to the wisdom that we lost with knowledge? And what happened to the knowledge we lost with information? And the thing about humor is you can have the information and we can know that it is beneficial, it fights cortisol, it staves off neuroinflammation, and it helps us sleep, and pain tolerance, and all that fun stuff. But if we're not putting that information to use, there's no knowledge there. And if we're not putting that knowledge to use, there's no wisdom. If you don't have the experience to understand how it's effective, how it changes your life, then it's just lost. That information is lost. So if you look around, there's a pretty significant disparity in ages, right? There's a lot of silver foxes in the audience. Looking at you, Sandra Lutz. Lots of sexy on the older end, and then just a handful of us youngsters, right? And it's because this is where the wisdom comes from. This is the lived experience. These are the people that did all the research. And those of us on the younger end of the scale are still trying to learn to apply that information, to turn that information to knowledge and that knowledge into wisdom. So basically, just look for the opportunity to find humor in everyday life, because the world is chaos. Trauma teaches you that the world is a dangerous, chaotic place. Yes, it's dangerous, and yes, it's chaotic, but it's almost like a beautiful chaos. It's the type of chaos where you can go to the grocery store, reach for that loaf of bread, and then your future soulmate also reaches for that loaf of bread, and now you just found each other, right? There's also the beautiful chaos of you can just find the dog that you've always wanted stray on the street, or I don't know, win a scratch-off ticket. You know, the world is chaos, but it doesn't mean it's negative. The way that you view the world is gonna change how you feel. That's the idea behind CBT, right? Have you heard of cognitive behavioral therapy? It's the chicken or the egg debate of, do our thoughts affect our feelings? Do our feelings affect our thoughts? And how does that affect our behavior? So if you're constantly looking and appreciating the humor in life, the better off you're gonna be. And that is really what saved my life. So thank you all for listening.